So I'm going to do one more tutorial with you guys while this is running. And I know I've got some like material issues and some background shading issues with this. I'll try to correct that in this one. But I'm also going to update the Studio Warm light. So the Studio Warm light is doing some action. You can see in the preview down there. If I stop it and refresh it, it should update. Yeah, it got a little brighter. And then you can go all the way down and it'll get a little less bright. See? So it's doing something, right? But it's not super profound. So what I'm going to do is change it to a spotlight and see how that actually changes the effect of the light. Now, the downside of these spotlight previews is it doesn't really tell you how much the light is getting into the space, so it might take some trial and error to get it because it might be, too hot with too much cone angle and stuff like that. So you just want to be careful with how you're playing around with these particular settings. The wattage on spotlights needs to be less than the wattage on an OmniLight, because an OmniLight, I believe, gets calculated by the square footage of the area that you're running the light on. So something like if it's a 1 square foot square and you have it set to 450 watts, that you're going to get 450 watts out of that. But if it's like if it's 4 times the size, you're going to get 1/4 of that out of the overall panel because it goes something like that. Anyway, so the wattage needs to be a bit less. So I'm going to switch this to 150 watts. Efficacy should be okay. Actually, I'm going to start a bit lower. Sorry. Choking. So I'm starting a bit lower. I'm going to change the cone angle to be a bit wider. So instead of 45, I'm going to go to 90. And that's really going to open it up and make it kind of like almost like a floodlight, but not quite as much. The fall off angle, I'm going to increase to 20, I think, something like 20. And that's going to create kind of a softer edge around the outside of it. Blur, I actually don't really know precisely how blur is affected. I don't think it matters. I don't think it's going to be super critical in our application. So let's just leave it at something like this, 150, 100, 90, 21, and 0.25. Should be an okay condition for us. So what I'm going to do then is replace this panel. I'm going to keep a copy of it back here. But I'm going to replace this panel with a Rhino spot. So I've got my sort of white wash light at the top. Then I've got the cool kind of like accent light on the right-hand side. And I'm going to have that flood coming in from the left-hand side that should be a little bit more intense. And let me play with how it actually reacts with the building a little bit more. So let's go and grab our spotlight family. What I like to do for the spotlight family is do it in orthogonal and kind of place it roughly where I want to place it. So I'm going to put it somewhere like here. And the wider I go, I think it'll matter. And then just kind of pull it up a little bit. So I want it to be kind of a wash, so I don't want the cone to be too tight. So I'll pull it up here. Yeah, actually this is probably pretty appropriate. So let me kind of spin this around so that I can just tilt this into it like that. So when you get behind it, it should actually shine at the thing. So let me do a little bit of the red. And then get that green one in there. And if you're really struggling to get it in position, you could always just like draw the axis you want it on too, but you don't have to. Actually, I want this to be a little further out. Yeah, let's give that a shot. So this, then I'm going to change onto Studio Warm. And then when you select the object, make sure you assign that material to it. Assign to selected. Let me grab my model. Set up my camera again. Something like this. It's a little intense, but that should work. Okay, and then I'll do a test render and we'll start playing around with it. Let me give it a couple minutes so that we can actually see it. I'm also going to clear my other renders too. I have a bunch of them on. Yeah. So I'm going to bump it up to 2,000 And what that does is when you get into your multi-light setting, it'll just go like from 0 to like 10,000 or something like that, or it calibrates with the size that you start with. I think we could also increase the efficacy too, and that's going to allow it to kind of wash, I think, further into the space. Even though you can't see it in the preview, you know, we've got a stronger light that floods the space a lot more now. So let's go back into render, and we'll check in back in the video here in a second. Okay, so to wrap up, just a couple of observations. I do kind of like the way it's turning out. Some of the lighting is sort of what I intended. It's getting a little close. If you look down at the preview, I wish this thing could be like made bigger, but it's not. But if you look down at the preview, you could always increase the white light above and it'll get brighter, which you could do. But then some of the other lights might burn out if you do that. The warm light on the side can be increased, and you're going to have kind of this like sunlighty sort of glow on the left-hand side. The preview makes it look a lot more intense than it's been turning out in the actual render. And then you could always kind of cool off the right-hand side by increasing the studio cool side. So that's the intent here. I like the result because it actually does look like a model put in a studio, which is kind of neat. I would need to change the reflectivity and probably the roughness of the metallic material I used, because it doesn't really work at this scale, for it to feel a little bit more appropriate when I re-render it later. But other than that, that's kind of the intent here. So the model's a little bit smaller, the focal distance is a little bit larger, so I didn't quite nail the depth of field that I wanted to get. So if I'm doing it again, I'd probably go back and decrease the f-stop, go a little bit smaller, maybe like a 4 or something like that rather than a 15, because of how far away I am from the focal point and all that stuff. Other than that, what questions do you have? So I don't know if you noticed that, what I did there, but like there are some cross shadows happening in this little hallway, which I think are quite nice. One of them is a sort of the warm sun, sort of sunlight emulating light that's happening on the left-hand side is creating this shadow. And then you've got the cool blue light creating this shadow over here, which I think creates some really interesting studio-like conditions in the actual render. So that's the intent with that. No questions yet again. All right, I'm getting the Kush ball. Okay. All right. Actually, I'm going to go on Amazon. I'm ordering it tonight. All right. Cool. So what you guys will need for, well, I'll kind of preface. We're going to do some sort of supplementary lessons and stuff on Thursday, but it's really not that much in terms of tutorialing. Tutorializing? Tutorializing, I think, is more appropriate. I might have just made that up. But we're gonna do some like light stuff and supplementary stuff on Thursday as needed. But you're gonna need essentially 3 renders for well, no, 2. Yeah, 2 renders. You're gonna need your full scale model in the site, and then you're gonna need your small scale model in the studio for Tuesday of next week. Okay, so I know you're all still kind of working on your architectural design on the exterior. And most of you should be done the interior, so let's try and wrap that up. If you need any commentary from me, some critique, grab me, and then don't go to this scale until you're done with the exterior, because it doesn't make sense. You're just going to have to do it over again. Okay? All right, let's do it.